right. Well, welcome everybody to Owlbear Odysseys. You may be noticing that things are a little bit different if you're one of the 171 longtime viewers of this channel.
We love you.
We are, yeah, thank you guys. But we're missing a third party for personal reasons. Marshall has chosen to step away from non-campaign episodes for however long is needed. So Shane and I are on our own today. I guess I should do introductions. I'm JT. This is Shane with me.
I'm
We
Shane with
are
me.
that is Shane with me. We are the Owlbears, and today we are going to play a little bit of a D&D Would You Rather. We're in full transparency. We're kind of trying to figure out the dynamics of a two-person video, and we figured this would be a kind of nice, just discussion-oriented video to nail that down. So each of us have created, I did 6. Did you do 6?
I did 6.
So each of us have created 6 would you rather scenarios that are themed around D&D in different ways. So we're going to explore those, kind of take turns posing the question and discuss and probably derail into some humorous nonsense that has nothing to do with anything. Are you ready, Shane? Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'm ready to get started. I do want to say I feel like, for the people watching this some of these it might be good to kind of like pick your favorite one, and then that could be a good, icebreaker at the start of a session or something. That's just my suggestion. That's a thought I had, but I'm ready to hop on over into our first one.
All right. And this first one is mine. And I decided to start us off pretty vanilla with, two, I would say, incredibly useful feats in real life. In the game, linguist is a non-factor. But Shane, would you rather, in real life, have the linguist feat or the skill expert feat?
See that there's a little bit of an issue there in that, it's like how well do you translate what a skill or what a skill check would be directly into, actual life where we don't roll a d20 every time we do something. So there's a little bit of difficulty there. I do personally love the skill expert feat.
Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned it in our 3x3 on feats, which is on the channel that you guys should watch. Um, I love it in the game. I don't love linguist in the game, but I do think I would take linguist in real life. I mean, learning new languages is hard, especially for us Americans who tend to generally expect other people to learn our language instead of the other way around. Um, it would be nice to just automatically know them, not have to actually put in the work. What would you answer for your own question here?
Linguist gives you 3 languages, right?
It's either 2 or 3. I couldn't remember which, so that's why I didn't specify.
I think it's 3. I could be wrong. Let me know if I am. I think it's 3. And that's huge. Like in real life, 3 languages would take, even if you're like being thrown into the cultures, it would take nearly a decade to learn 3 languages to fluency. Um, but yeah, I think the skill expert struggle because one thing with skill expert is that it gives you a proficiency and then it gives you expertise with something you already have proficiency with. So it's like, could I make the argument that I, as a person, am proficient in investigation already to get expertise? I think that becomes kind of the talking point.
Well, you don't have to worry about that because as far as I'm aware, rules is written, you could learn a proficiency and then pick expertise in that proficiency.
You could, you could, but you can also choose 2 different skills to kind of buff to different levels. So you could kind of cheat that if you want to take something that there's no way that I have proficiency in athletics, so I could just jump straight to expertise. But there is at least a discussion to be had in some scenarios. Um, but I think I would also go with linguist, um, just because again, learning a language, much less 3 languages, is such a bigger time sink than learning a skill. In fact, Shane and I both are currently learning new languages. Um, and I guess my next question would be what I'm going to look it up to make sure it's 3. But if it is, what three languages would you choose to learn?
Well, I feel like, again, as an American, I almost am forced to pick Spanish. Not it's not something I would pick because like I particularly like, I don't particularly dislike the language, but it's not one that would be, oh man, I just love Spanish, I want to learn that one. But it's like that would be realistically the most useful
Mhm.
in my life other than, English. Um so Spanish kind of automatically takes out one slot. Did you confirm two or three?
It is three. You also increase your intelligence by one and learn to ably create written ciphers,
All right,
which is neat.
yeah, that's neat, I guess. I really don't know how I'd fill the other two in. Those I would just pick something that I would find fun. Like for some
Hmm.
reason like Russian or something. Especially
Oh
if you
yeah.
if you feel like, you know, languages that have, very different like sounds, like how different or how hard it is for, like some of the like Eastern languages like L's and R's and stuff like that, how that's difficult. Like if you think
Hmm.
about it, like would one of those people if they picked linguist and got English, would that like immediately make them able to, perfectly say all of the letters that would be difficult for them otherwise? Then you might want to pick like some language that would be hard for you to learn for those purposes. So like something like a Russian where there's these, you know, these noises that are harder for native English speakers to necessarily pronounce. Um, and I really don't know for three. That one's a complete wild card. What's your answer?
I feel like I would not dare to say that I'm fluent, but I feel like I'm pretty conversational in Spanish already. So I would not waste a slot on that one, given how much time I've already committed to it. I would say German, just because that's a language that I do have an interest in. Japanese, because I want to visit Japan someday, and I think speaking the language would be very beneficial. And then, I mean, Chinese would be a fun one to throw in just because it is such a difficult language. But I
You also
like
want to
part of,
want to have the, that knowledge ready to go for, when China calls in our debt and then they rule the world, right?
right. Um, Part of me though wants to give the third slot to like I don't know, ancient Assyrian or something like something that would just make me invaluable to historians.
Ah, you're thinking about it from a useful standard. I was at that point by three. I'm just thinking like, what would be the most random, like funny thing to be like? Hi, I'm Shane. I'm a software developer, and I'm fluent in Esperanto. What's the most fun that I thing that I can fill in that blank there with? And you're over here like, how can I make myself more valuable? How
Well, but
lame.
I think Assyrian would serve both purposes.
That's true.
It's like
You get two for
what
one
is a
there.
what's a better icebreaker than being fluent in a dead language?
I suppose so. All right. We spent
All
enough
right,
time
so
here.
yeah, we're both linguists.
Yeah. So I decided to
Ooh.
come out of the gate swinging with my first one.
Oh
Um,
no.
it's also an easier question for me because we have much different experiences in this area. But my would you rather is: would you rather never DM again or never be a PC again?
Um, so I think I already know which one you would choose between these.
There's a
I
lot of D&D players for whom this would be an incredibly easy choice.
Yeah, I feel like this one was specifically chosen to make me suffer. So if you guys don't know, we're actually on the channel about to start a new campaign. I believe it's starting in September. Are we going live
September.
in September?
Should be
Okay,
September.
so yeah, it's not going to be live streamed anymore. It's going to be pre-recorded, but it'll be starting in September. And I am the DM for it, and I've been DMing nearly as long as I've been playing the game, and I really love it. I love both sides of it. I love DMing and I love playing. I think if I had to give one up, it's like, am I more excited for the campaign ideas that I have or the character ideas that I have? And I think I could work a lot of my characters in as NPCs in a campaign. But like if I give up DMing, I have so many, like a Star Trek inspired campaign that I've been wanting to do for years is just gone. So I think I would have to give up being a PC ever again.
Yeah, I kind
And
of
that
figured
hurt.
that was coming.
It hurts.
Yeah, yeah. You're not fighting the allegations that we're too DM centric in our opinions. But I will because I'm definitely picking never being a DM again.
Mm.
I enjoy DMing every now and then. I haven't done it nearly as much as you or Marshall have. But my primary experience is as a player, and I wouldn't pick DMing over playing, over being a PC. I don't want to say being a player because the DM is playing, but you know what I mean
Yeah,
here. That's why I went with PC.
yeah, fair. And I think one of the struggles is, and I don't say this in any way to like toot my own horn or talk about how great I am, but I do think that I like have a level of skill as a DM to where like once I started DMing, it's like, oh hey, I enjoy this and I'm good at it and I feel like the players are having a good time. So I feel like I did just kind of get stuck in, hey, DM this upcoming game. It's like, yeah, sure. And then I just before Heartwood Heist, the last player character I did was a head cheerleader in a Ghostbusters campaign that Shane DM'd.
It's true.
And I
You're
do
not
miss
exactly
Bridget.
a forever DM, but you're in dangerous territory of getting there. You know.
I'm a usual DM.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we're split on this one. I think predictably so for anyone who knows us.
Yeah. All right.
Leads us into my next one, which is one that I'm actually pretty proud of this. I don't know, maybe this is an easy choice for you. I'm proud of this.
Excuse me.
Would you rather? Shane, would you rather be isekai'd into, and when I say into D&D, I just mean a standard D&D fantasy world, at level 5 with the ability to gain experience and level up as normal, or be isekai'd into D&D at level 10, but you're stuck at level 10 forever?
See, this is this is a really good question. It is also really easy for me to answer
Okay,
because I would hate being in D&D and never leveling up, right? Like
right.
I'm people get mad at not mad. They get tired of, there's the joke of, you know, every campaign starting at level 1, not getting old and whatnot. And it's like, yeah, once you've played D&D long enough, playing a level 1 character can be kind of hard on people sometimes. Playing a low level character, not really my experience, but if you're used to playing, in the teens or something for some reason, then even starting at level 5 might be rough for you. Um, Level 5 is a great level to start at. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to grow is much more important to me than, you know, starting off powerful. So I'm definitely picking level 5.
You're choosing level 5. I honestly, I'm with you. I also choose level 5, but I will offer an argument for level 10. There are two things to consider for my argument. The first one is the possibility of dying, because you're not guaranteed to be in a party in this scenario, or like, to find like a balanced party. And so, there are dangers that come along with being relatively low level and having to work your way up. You could straight up die and there not be anyone nearby with Revivify. Um, but the other one is once you get into the higher levels, if you don't use milestone leveling, then the EXP that you have to get just gets to some pretty ridiculous amounts. And so the higher you get, the harder it is to level up. And so, like, granted, from 10 to 11, I don't think would be a crazy level, but like, 15 to 16, it's getting a lot harder to achieve that. And so I think there's a case to be made for, level 10, you're already more powerful than 90% of people in the world. I think there are people who would just want to stay there, but I agree that being able to have the higher ceiling is worth it. So I would choose level 5.
Yeah, and yeah, I definitely agree with you seeing the appeal of the level 10 option. That's why, I said it's an easy answer for me, but it is a good question because there's definitely
Yeah.
merit on both sides. It's just I'll take level 5. I mean, I could die at level 10. I could, die in real life at level -3, so,
Yeah.
All right.
And hey, feel free to drop a comment letting us know your thoughts on any of these questions or all of them, if you want to leave 12 paragraphs. But if specifically, if you would choose level 10 without the possibility of ever leveling up, I'm curious your reasoning for that. If it aligns with what I said or if there's a different reason, let us know. Drop a comment.
Yeah. And being the mechanics rules lawyer guy I am, tell me what your level 10 build is going to be if you just get randomly dropped into an isekai.
Yeah.
Um, but that said, next one, it's my next one. And you mentioning the Star Trek campaign you had in mind. This question directly comes from things we've said to each other and how much I know about campaign settings you have ideas about. So, my would you rather is would you rather only ever be able to play in a traditional high fantasy setting again, or never again be able to play a game in a high fantasy setting? So for people watching, this is your typical. This is Wild Mount Faerun, Lord of the Rings style.
Right.
your most typical D&D setting. And so it's either every single game you are part of from here on is just limited to that, or you can never play that setting again.
Yeah. I mean, this is a pretty easy one for me. I would choose never being able to play high fantasy again. And it's not because I dislike high fantasy. I have so much respect for Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and I mean, basically birthing the fantasy genre and everything that he's done with it. There's a lot of great fantasy fiction and campaigns in the world. Um, but just from a purely mathematical standpoint, one of these is trapping you to a single setting. The other one is giving you so much license. Even if you're trapped out of the most common setting, there are so many more possibilities beyond high fantasy. And again, I just have, I enjoy D&D campaigns that break the mold. Let's play a far future campaign. Let's play industrial revolution campaign. Let's play modern magic. I think that kind of stuff is really fun. I Again, no disrespect to high fantasy. It is what D&D was built on. But if I had to make this choice, I would choose to never again play in high fantasy.
And I would make the opposite choice, partially based on the thing you were saying there at the end that you were kind of pointing out. Yeah, it's what the game is built on.
Hmm.
I feel like I love using D&D to play whatever setting. As you mentioned earlier, the last game I ran was a modern new Ghostbusters game. So it's like this year, just using D&D mechanics and saying that this is like Ghostbuster stuff. So it's clearly I'm not opposed to branching out. Um, but I do think that the setting is made, or the game is made for this setting. It's the one that most easily flows with the mechanics. So it's like unless you want to, or if you don't want to have to go out of your way to make something work, then this is your best choice. Also, I particularly enjoy the setting. I love this kind of swords and sorcery world. Um, it's a personal favorite. I would definitely miss the other options, but were I to take your pick, I would miss high fantasy a lot more. So
Yeah, my watch broke. Um,
I know.
Now just the pin is loose, and so it's the band's about to come apart. Um, yeah, and I just want to say, choosing to lock myself out of high fantasy, I would miss high fantasy as well. I'm not saying You know, I feel like I really have to defend myself here because of how integral high fantasy is to D&D.
We'll see
I'm not
which one of
saying
us gets the more hate for this answer.
right. I'm not saying like bye bye Tolkien, have fun in heck, because I really would miss high fantasy, but that's just my personal opinion. Is I would have more fun in a more diverse group of settings, and I think that both answers have value.
All right. That way, let's move on to your next one.
Oh yes, this is the first one that I came up with,
Oh,
and I decided to put it a little bit later because I thought the other two were better to start with. Um, and to give a little bit of backstory, originally this question was you can choose any ninth level spell to cast once per week versus any cantrip to cast at will. Um, and I decided to just kind of make it a little bit more restrictive. So would you rather be able to cast time stop once per week, and specifically you are casting time stop, you're not using, Zawordo, like you are beholden to the limitations of time stop, the ninth level spell, or be able to cast Mage Hand at will.
so first of all, if you had said it was just any ninth level spell slot, um, the worlds would never be the same if I got the ability to cast Meteor Swarm every week. Just gonna put
Right.
put that aside. There's a little bookmark that one. So two, I have a clarifying question here. Can can I have any way to have like to get like Arcane Trickster's Ledger Domain or something, or the Gith ability, something that makes it Mage Hand invisible, because it's
Say
so
that
much better when it's invisible.
I'll say if that for the purposes of this question, you get an invisible Mage Hand.
Oh, oh, that tips the scale. It's just enough to. I think I would have to pick Mage Hand, as bizarre as it feels, saying I would pick a cantrip over a ninth level spell. I feel like just thinking about the reality of the world we live in it,
Hmm.
and like my daily life, I feel like Mage Hand would be more useful. It's like, realistically, what am I gonna do with what, like, minimum of 12 seconds of frozen time a week? If I was a fast person, I guess, if I was, dexterous, maybe I could make better use of that. But I feel like the most useful option to me would be Mage Hand.
That's fair. I guess the 1d4 plus 1 turns does kind of like if you I think I've said this before. I believe that Time Stop is the most underwhelming ninth level spell, both in how it's used in game and like the actual limitations of the spell. Not to say that it's not good, but I think that it's incredibly underwhelming. Um, just to read from Time Stop, the spell ends if one of the actions you use during this period or any effects that you create affects a creature other than you or an object being worn or carried by someone other than you. If you watch, I think it's the penultimate session of Heartwood Heist, either the penultimate or the final session.
It's a
Um,
penultimate.
okay, Marshall uses Time Stop and like makes a joke about taking my character Beef, who has a bronze discus that never came up in the entire campaign, but I just had it in my inventory. He makes a joke about like taking that and throwing it on the ground, and our um, local rules lawyer Shane was like, if he does that, Time Stop ends. Um, but it is just a really limited spell.
Yeah, you
It
have to
ends if you,
be. Sorry, I was just gonna say you have to be very
yeah.
creative to make it to use it well. I do
Mm.
I do remember I've mentioned NADPOD too many times on our videos, but I don't
But
remember
keep
which campaign it is at this point. But I remember that there's a time that Murph uses it as like a bad guy, and it's the gang was trying to protect something, and the bad guy uses it to get to the thing without them being able to stop the bad guy. And so it's like there are certainly uses for it. there are certainly things that make it a very good spell, but it doesn't have nearly the power that you would think something called Time Stop would have.
Right. And I do want to say 1d4 plus 1 turns, I believe that maxes at 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll say, since we gave a buff to Mage Hand, and I don't think this will change your answer, it won't change mine either. I'm choosing Mage Hand. But for any of you watching, I'm also going to give a slight buff to Time Stop, that you get consistently 1 minute of stopped time every time you use it. It's not a random amount of time anymore.
That is
Um,
that is a strong hand on the scale.
well,
I
if that
don't
changes your opinion, we can discuss that. I just want to give Time Stop a little bit more.
I don't know, do I would I be fast enough to rob a bank I mean, pet a dog in a minute? Things that I would actually use Time Stop for. Definitely not, stealing money.
It's like, you've really got to think about the practical applications of these. Mage Hand, even if you don't have it invisible, it's got a lot of like just practical uses. The invisibility just makes it a little more sneaky. But Time Stop, it's like, what can I use that minute for in my day to day life?
I mean, I guess if you wanted to be, a stage magician and,
Mhm.
have one show a week, that would be kind of interesting. You could probably
Yeah,
perform the trick from Prestige, and you wouldn't even need a twin. Um,
yeah.
but no,
I think,
it doesn't actually change my answer. It is a big buff though.
yeah. I think that if you're creative enough, you could find like a fun use for Time Stop every week. But Mage Hand is just being able to use it at will, is just, which, I mean, that's how cantrips work anyway. But in real life, being able to use it as often as I want, and it's invisible, there's so much that you can do with it. So I will also choose Mage Hand.
All right, so we're both choosing Mage Hand. But what about? All right, would you rather
Ooh,
always have to be the party's designated healer, or always have to be the party's designated frontliner slash tank? Now, I do want to add an addendum
interesting.
here that, we're strong believers in you should be able to play what you want in D&D. And if you're in a setting where you are being forced to be a class or even, a type, a role that you don't want to be, you should consider whether or not you should be in that situation.
Right.
That said, this is the question I'm asking. We're ignoring that, and here you are forced to be one of them.
I think, because another something we have to consider here is how flexible of a system D&D is, because there are a lot of different ways to build either of these. I would argue that there are probably more flexibility in the frontline position than there is in the healer, but there's
Yeah.
still a lot of ways to build a healer.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm gonna try to narrow that window a little bit by saying not just frontliner is being like a tank. You don't have to be a barbarian every single time,
Hmm.
or a paladin every time. But I'm definitely I'd say probably nothing with a D8 hit die. It has to be D10 or barbarian.
Okay.
So that
So
cuts it
you're like
down.
really having to emphasize DPS in this position.
Yeah, and I know that cuts out a lot of frontliner and honestly, at least a few tank build options. But
Yeah,
that's a caveat I'm making to make it a little more narrow of a divide.
that's interesting. Um, so what specific classes is that leaving us with? That leaves us with Paladin, Barbarian.
Paladin, barbarian, ranger, fighter. I
Ranger
think
has D10? I don't
yeah,
think I knew that.
I think blood hunter
Nice.
maybe if you're counting that.
Good for you, Ranger.
Blood hunter may
Um,
be a D8. I think it's D10 though. Anyway,
Let us know. Um, hmm. At Okay, so a clarification. As the healer, am I allowed to kind of like hybridize into healer support as long as I'm still like filling the healer role?
I would say yeah. I think just the way the D&D is built, if you're playing a character that is just healing, one character of that might be fun, but that would
Right,
get old really quickly if you couldn't cast anything that wasn't healing.
right. And as we've mentioned before, and other people have observed, healing really isn't that balanced in D&D, especially at higher levels. I heard this from you, Shane. I don't know where you heard it from, but I remember you saying that the best healing spell is polymorph.
Yeah, I heard that from somewhere else that I don't remember either. So credit to
But
wherever that was.
opening it up to support, I actually really enjoy playing support characters. And I understand I can't play pure support. I feel like if I'm understanding right, it's either full healer or hybridized healer support.
I feel like healer would be the focus. Like
Yeah.
it's again, it's not just healing, but you have to be like primarily healing.
But I think I would still choose healer. I think I would get bored of being at the front dealing heavy damage so often, just because I really like being experimental and creative in combat. Again, check out the. I think this was also the penultimate episode of Hardwood. I can't remember. The last two episodes run together in my mind a lot. Um, but there's a moment where, oh, this might be too spoilery actually. Just let it be known that there's a moment where I ask Marshall a question that is in. I think he took it as a joke, and it fundamentally changed the combat and the campaign because I wanted to do something silly. So I would choose having to play healer.
Yeah, yeah. I may have narrowed that gap for you a little too much. I honestly I didn't think about my answer to this, but I would probably go healer too. I enjoy playing healing and playing support sometimes. I mean I like all of the roles, but I would
Mm,
definitely I'd get tired of being boxed into either of these corners, but I
yeah,
think frontliner tank would get old quicker. So I'd say healer too.
yeah. And I'll offer a brief challenge to anyone watching who, regardless of how long you've been playing D&D, you've kind of typecast yourself and only play one role. Do like a short campaign where you play fully against type. Like if you're used to playing DPS, do a full support build and just see how you like it. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But I think that that could be a fun experiment to just really try a different role in the party.
Unfortunately, we have yet to get the ability to force you to choose a class yet. But
Yeah,
once we will, it'll no longer be a suggestion.
but
Definitely.
just know that if you don't take our advice, we're not mad. We're just disappointed.
Oh, okay. Well, with that, we're gonna move on.
Um, okay, so here, and this one's actually, I would argue that you and I actually have experience with the latter here. Um, but would you rather play a long-term game that meets consistently with, and I want to change my wording here, maybe not mediocre, a good but not a great DM. But this is however long for you would be like a good length of a game that meets weekly. Maybe
Hmm.
like misses one session every couple of months. Or would you play a single one shot with an exceptional DM, and after that, you can never play with that DM again? They're just too busy. They've got kids, man.
I like the question, but it is not even close. I would absolutely pick the first one, playing a long term game. I mean,
Okay,
a regular game is the like the ephemeral dream of any D&D player.
it
Um,
is.
it never quite works out exactly. There's always something wrong with it. And the thing
Yeah,
is, like, a DM does kind of make, in a lot of ways, does make or break, how much fun you're gonna have. But it's not like it's the only factor. And like you're saying, a mediocre or even a good but not great DM, that's definitely still a good time if you're if
mm,
the players are also fun. Which is
yeah.
a different, a different factor we're not considering here. Um, but yeah,
I would say
it's not even
equalized
close.
party.
What'd you say?
I was gonna say, like, as far as players are concerned, equal party. Like, it's the same group of players
Yeah, yeah.
across these. It's a non-factor.
Not even close. Long-term
Yeah,
game.
that makes
Debatable.
sense. I do disagree, and I think that we're in a unique position as people who like have a D&D channel because we kind of do get a consistent game. It's not, I mean, it's not weekly, but um, we get a relatively consistent game, and I like that. I would personally, if it's like just an amazing DM who's going to give 6 to 8 hours, however long a standard one shot is. I really don't know because I've done one shots that are an hour long and I've done one shots that were 12 hours. But, you know, 6 to 8 hours of just like an exceptional DM. And my idea is like, this is your only chance to play with this DM. I would take that just for the experience.
That's fair.
Um,
I mean, it's not like saying that, this one shot is the only game you'll ever be allowed to play. It's not,
right.
that's not part of it. So from that perspective, I can see that. How it's like, you want to capitalize on the option while you got it. And it's like there will be other games that will be, almost consistent that you might have. Um,
Hmm.
I see your
Yeah.
answer. I'm not changing mine.
No, that's fair. Um, just as a brief story, and I know this video is already getting a little long, but Shane and I were groomsmen in a wedding. I guess this was last year. Um, that we did a one shot for the, what's the word I'm looking for?
Bachelor party.
Bachelor party. I was trying to say groom's party, and that was wrong. We did a one shot for the bachelor party that actually ended up being a one shot that happened on the day of the wedding, which was really fun. But the DM was amazing, and I'm thinking like, if I got a chance to do like, no limitations, no interruptions, a one shot with that DM again, I'd take that. He was great.
That's fair. Yeah. I thought you might
But
be
yeah,
talking
no.
about going off track from further. I thought you might be referencing our first D&D experience together. And I was like, I didn't think he was that amazing, but we didn't finish that one shot either. But that's a
Oh
story
yeah.
for another video. Slash, we
Oh,
may have already said it before.
I wasn't even thinking about that. No. Okay, but I think
Yeah,
two valid answers.
yeah. All right. So my next question: would you rather be able
Ooh.
to cast comprehend languages in real life as a ritual, or would you rather be able to cast speak with animals in real life as a ritual? Don't ask me why I did this.
I just want to say, we're not editing this video because, well, quite frankly, we didn't manage our time well. If we were, I would probably like pop up what these spells do in post. But I mean, read the names of the spells, you get the gist of it.
Yeah, pretty
For
much.
me, the question of this boils down to one simple factor. I cannot learn every language. I mean, there are, I believe, around 6,000 languages spoken in Papua New Guinea alone. Fun fact, that is the area of the world with the most languages per capita. But like, I can commit enough time to learn any language. Like, if I really put in the time, I could learn Mandarin Chinese. Um, am I going to? No. But like, I am, again, I consider myself to be conversational in Spanish. I know bare bits of German and Koine Greek. Um, so like, comprehend languages is really neat, and it's a massive shortcut and time save, but it is not giving me an ability in general terms that I don't already have. There is no amount of study that will allow me to talk to a bear. I can commit my life, the remaining 52 years I have of life before the car accident, to studying the language of whales, and I still won't be able to communicate with them. I have my beautiful dog who loves to sleep on that bed whenever I'm in here recording. The chance to like communicate with her directly, or any other animal, that's just too good to pass up. I gotta take speak with animals.
Yeah, that's a really good point. in society, in many ways, we kind of have a crappy version of comprehend language, is in that we typically carry around a device in our pockets that can use Google Translate at least.
Yeah.
Um, so I actually kind of hadn't considered it from that perspective, because I feel like with that taken into account, this is kind of an easy question, and I would have to agree with you that speak with animals would be better. But I do think that comprehend languages, of course, would be very
Yeah.
useful. Like you said, it
Absolutely.
would be a great time saver. It would be a lot more reliable than Google Translate. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, speaking of animals, takes the cake.
Comprehend languages would make, like, if you have the money for it, world travel so much easier.
It's true.
Now, I'm a counselor, so I don't have the money for like US travel, much less world travel. But I think there are arguments being made for comprehend languages. I'm just not making them.
That's fair.
All right, now on to mine. It was at this point in making this slideshow that I realized that I had done a lot of like, and I talked to Shane about this beforehand. Most of mine are choose from two good options. And originally, this was a little bit more limited. So the question as it is, would you rather have a 20 in strength, dexterity, and constitution, or have a 20 in intelligence, wisdom, and charisma? Originally, it was just strength versus intelligence, but I decided to go all out with it. So between fully maxing your soft stats or your hard stats, I don't like that term. Um, which would you choose?
I mean, the obvious answer is that I already have a 20 in the soft stats. Um,
You do
but
not
but
have a
that
20
is
charisma, my
but that
man.
is that is a lie. And I don't have a 20 in any of them. I mean, you're especially correct about charisma, but I don't like that you pointed it out that way.
Sorry.
No, it's totally fine. It's it's like, how vain am I? Because having 20 in the hard stats, that, as you chose to say it, as your phrasing, the hard stats.
Let's not let that catch on.
No, it's what I'm gonna say. That would just kind of be from a very that would be a good choice from a very vain aspect of, you know, being the peak physical form. Um, I feel like the soft stats. I'm basically picking, do I want to be a jock in high school or the nerd in high school?
Right.
Although then again, charisma is included there too, so it's not really the same thing. I think I have to go for the soft stats. If I had
Yeah.
the 20 in intelligence and wisdom, I could give you better reasons for why that was the correct choice. But I just have to go with that one.
I'm not sure which stat self control is, but I'm positive that it is a soft stat. So if I had a 20 in it, I would probably have better constitution because I wouldn't overeat as much.
It's true. I
Um,
feel like that's beside the point. I feel like that's probably a wisdom. It's like
that's what I'm
being
thinking.
able to like have the that foresight to let what you know is the better choice win.
An argument that I will make, I'm with you. I would take the soft stats. I feel like having a 20 in intelligence, like intelligence alone, I think would be really neat. Um, just to feel what it's like to be Lex Luthor. Um,
I was just thinking
could have said
it would be
Batman.
odd to be simultaneously the biggest nerd in existence and also an absolute stud that everyone likes because
You really are like, I mean, granted, Batman has a 25 in every stat, but picking the soft stats,
depends on who's
you
writing
really,
him. But yeah,
yeah. Silver Age Batman has a 30 in all of them, but you really are kind of choosing to be Batman, right? Like you are a super genius, but you're also just like widely beloved because Bruce Wayne is an incredibly beloved person. He's super charismatic. Yeah, you're kind of just choosing to be Batman. But anyway, my argument for getting a 20 in the hard stats a 20 in Constitution, like I'm just wondering, because if you're not aware, like 20 is considered to be beyond superhuman level. Like if you, I would say probably the best weightlifters in the world probably have a D&D equivalent of a 15 in strength is what it's supposed to be. If you actually do the math, it probably doesn't line up. But that's like the idea is that 20 is getting far beyond human limits. If you have a 20 in Constitution, like you just
You're
never get sick again.
I was gonna say if you have a 20 in Constitution, then you're the host of the Hot Ones challenge, the guy
Oh yeah,
who eats those hottest wings, but like does it for every guest. That
yeah,
man, there's no way that man can taste anything at this point. But
right.
that that's my idea of a 20 in Constitution.
So my kind of curiosity is how much does a 20 in Constitution extend your lifespan?
It's a good question.
Because like you're easily living to 100 healthy.
It's a good
But
question.
anyway, so we're both on board of soft stats,
Yeah. Sorry, hard stats, but it's
and it
soft
also
stats.
depends on like your occupation and your interests.
That's true. All right. Uh,
Oh,
this is the one that's gonna get us hate, and probably mostly me once I've answered. But would you rather play a game with absolutely no homebrew allowed, or play a game that is entirely homebrew? And so obviously
uh,
it's like if you're still using the system, right? Like it's not entirely homebrew, but it's kind of like you're using the mechanics, but basically everything that can reasonably be homebrewed is. I'm talking classes, I'm talking spells, items.
oh.
Like you're not gonna see a monster you recognize. That's not gonna happen.
I'm also assuming that in this world, like if the DM does not know the specific rule, he's just gonna make something up. He's not gonna look it up.
I mean that's tangential, but yeah, that would reasonably follow.
I I love this question, and we know people who would absolutely choose the latter. This one is not hard for me. I would much rather play the one with no homebrew.
Hmm.
Um, I do, and to give a little bit of my own philosophy, I do enjoy homebrewing some things. I like, specifically for me, I like to homebrew items to specifically align with what a player is wanting for their character throughout the campaign. Um, and I like to homebrew monsters to like fit the specific combat. Everything else, I really like to use what the game gives us. Here is here's kind of my basic argument for this. Now, don't misunderstand me to say that D&D is perfectly balanced, because we all know that's not true. Looking at y'all Rangers, um, Bard spell list, freaking Arch Druid ability. D&D is not perfectly balanced, but there's at least an attempt made. WotC has put a level of work into making sure that the D&D system works, and that there is there is value in choosing to be a fighter instead of choosing to be a wizard. Um, Homebrew is under no such restriction. I've seen some balanced homebrew. I've also seen the garlic bread cleric homebrew. If y'all don't know about that one, look it up.
Oh, that's a good one.
There's just like when there are no limitations, like how crazy is this DM going to go? He's going to be given like level 1 spells that can raise the dead permanently. Like you just don't know. And so I would rather play with no homebrew.
Interesting. I really wondered which side you were going to end up on because I have an idea of, your philosophy on the subject. But it's not entirely surprising which one you chose. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on the same page. I am the rules lawyer of the channel. I love the mechanics. I take joy out of knowing the mechanics. And when people get too loose with it, you start to lose me especially when it's like, if there's something that, I've read that is a rule that it's like, I know this is how the game is supposed to work. When
Hmm.
something doesn't work that way, maybe it's a personal problem that I can't get over it. I'm sure plenty of people would see it that way, but it's just like, it's like there's a lot that as a player you can't control no matter what. But a level of control can be exerted by knowing what the rules are. Knowing the sandbox
Yep.
you're in. Um, and a huge part is what you're saying about balance. I agree with you completely. It's like, you know, there is an amount of effort that has been expended from a company and a collection of people to attempt to keep the game somewhat balanced. Um, and I mean, homebrewers, they all try, I'm sure. Some of them are better at it than others, and some of them are really, really bad at it. And the people who love homebrew the most tend to be the people who are the worst at it, at keeping it balanced. So I'd absolutely go with no homebrew too.
And this isn't to say don't use homebrew in your games.
Yeah, this is
I would,
picking between the two extremes.
yeah, I
There's
would
a happy
say,
medium somewhere on the line.
yeah, and that medium point is going to change based on your personality and the party you're playing with. I would say the best advice I can give here is understand the rules thoroughly before you start bending or building your own homebrew, because it's at the point where you know what specific items do that you understand the power level. um, but for me personally, and I'll kind of say this, and this will be the last thing I'll say, I think it's really fun to find fun interactions in the game as it exists. That, like, I get a lot of enjoyment out of, okay, here's a like rough subclass. What's a build that can make this better? Like, what are some feats that would improve this subclass? In the same way that, like, I enjoy competitive Pokemon. I'm not good at it, but I enjoy it. Partially because I like taking my favorites and, like, what's a build that makes Decidueye viable? I still haven't found one. If you know it, let me know. Um, but to me, the fun is like finding fun interactions within the rules as they exist and not rewriting the rules. But if you like homebrew, do homebrew.
Yeah,
Just know the limitations.
yeah. One I have to also throw in an extra bit of thing here.
Yeah.
But you saying, learning the rules, knowing what already exists before you start bending. It's like one of the easiest thing, one of the things that easily happens when you're homebrewing is you'll hand out an ability that, could have been gotten through some other, existing way. And it's like, um, here's one, like the Arcane Trickster, one of their, I don't remember what level, but it's like medium to high level. It's somewhere in the tens. They get the ability that when they are hidden from a creature, if they cast a save DC spell, the creature has disadvantage on that. Which, like, that's something that almost kind of seems like something that anyone should be able to have, right? Like if you're hidden from it, then it reasonably makes sense that they'd have a harder time resisting the spell. But if that's something that you just hand out, then you're taking away from an arcane trickster in a way. And that's just
Mhm.
one example. There's lots of ways that something like that can happen, and it's just something to be aware of.
Yep. Is their ninth level ability Magical Ambush?
It was not nearly as
Yeah.
high as I thought it was. My bad.
I was actually gonna make the same point and I decided not to, but like, I agree. If you, and a lot of times people will, like, DMs who maybe have less experience. Again, there's nothing wrong with having less experience. Please don't think that you can't DM if you haven't played for 20 years. But a lot of times people will make the mistake of giving away an ability that is actually a feat, and what you've done is devalued that feat, and that's just something to be aware of.
Yeah.
But anyway, we've probably talked about this one enough.
I thought
But
this
it's
was
a
going to
good
be a
question.
short video, and it clearly is not. So,
We just talk too much.
certainly.
But on to my last one, and this is the one where I noticed that I had been doing too many like choose between two positives. So I feel like either one of these is a horrible, horrible life. Um, so would you rather cast the magic jar spell, but have the vessel be lost at sea for an indefinite amount of time, or be afflicted by the effects of Soul Cage cast by a vindictive witch? This might be a situation where we do have to explain what these spells do.
Not me. No, I'm not looking at Magic Jar at this moment. No.
Um,
Oh.
would you like to share what Magic Jar does so
Well,
that
this is
people can
a long spell, so I am not going to read all
share?
6 paragraphs. It would seem that the gist of it is that your soul inhabits the jar, the container.
Hmm.
You are able to attempt to possess humanoid within 100 feet of you. Um, and you can return to the container while you're possessing a body. You can choose to go back. So, obviously if the jar is lost at sea, um, then, there's no possessing anything at that point. You're just,
Yeah.
you know, stuck in a bottle floating on the waves. Soul
What
Cage,
I
I
do want to point out real quick about Magic Jar, because I think that this is an important one, is that you are conscious while you're in the vessel. You are aware of your surroundings. So it's not like, you go into a coma until a humanoid comes within 100 feet. You're feeling the entire time that you're lost at sea.
you know that yeah. Soul Cage, that's one that I'm personally a little more familiar with. But that one spell snatches the soul of humanoid as it dies, traps inside the tiny cage you use for the component. And then there are 4 things that the caster can you do that basically that it says exploits the soul you have trapped. And you can drain vigor from it, steal life, query soul, you can ask a question, borrow experience, you can give yourself advantage on a attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, and eyes of the dead. Um, you can create a sensor in a place that the soul saw in life. So, you know, soul the for the purposes of this, you know, question, soul cage cast by a vindictive witch. You have died and your soul is being, used.
Yeah.
I
It lasts for 8 hours or 6 uses of the soul, whichever comes first.
yeah,
So my assumption would be Vindictive Witch, she's going to use it all 6 times.
yeah. I mean, I feel like I in a way this is like, do you want life in prison or, the death penalty? And, a particularly painful death penalty probably. But
Hmm.
I'm still picking Soul Cage. I don't want to be just, in a seeing out of a bottle floating on the waves. That has to be, essentially never-ending torture of just being alone with your thoughts and literally nothing to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm sure, like, your soul being trapped in a cage and being exploited for, power. There's no way that can be a, positive or good feeling. But at least it's over within 8 hours, right? And then your soul is just, gone or free.
Right. I think the 8 hours is what really clinches it because with Soul Cage, there's an ending. I I have to assume that Steel Life, where vigor is drained from your soul, I have to assume that hurts.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
absolutely, right?
there's no way that's a Swedish massage. I can't say that phrase. Um, but it's like, do you take a limited amount of pain, or I mean, you'll go insane with Magic Jar if you're like alone for that long. You will go crazy. Yeah, I agree. I would take Soul Cage. But either of these is a fate worse than death.
Yeah, yeah. All right. My final question. I'm hitting hard here. play a monk who can't use key points, or play a wizard who can only use the ritual spells. And I will add, we're calling spells here. I will allow the wizard to use cantrips. Because, a
Okay.
monk that can't use key points can still, they can't flurry of blows, but they can still punch once, and they can still punch normally. The wizard has to be able to
Yeah.
do something.
Hmm. So let me share just a little bit of behind the scenes. I finished all of my Would You Rather's last night, and Shane, I believe, finished them earlier today. So he's kind of seen all of mine. I don't know how much you looked at them, but like this is the first time I'm seeing his. um, that being said, so here's the thing: a monk who can't use key points are already an incredibly limited resource. This is something that I think we've discussed before. Is that as a monk, really the biggest hurdle you run into is running through your key points incredibly fast. And so on the one hand, it's like, basically this boils down to playing a monk who has permanently been in combat for 4 rounds. Um, but I think I would choose a wizard because there is a good variety of ritual spells that can still provide a lot of use. You wouldn't be as good in combat, but like Liamon's Tiny Hut is a ritual. I believe Galder's Castle is a
Hmm.
ritual. It's not? Oh, okay. Well, Tiny Hut is. I think Legend Lore is a ritual. There's still.
I
I
don't
might
know
have to look up
offhand.
a list of ritual spells.
I
Um,
think that the max, like talking level wise, I think the highest one is Rary's Bond at 5th level, possibly.
okay. Well, you
I'm
do
not.
get Rary's Bond. You get no for Forbiddance. It's 6th level.
Oh, okay. Never mind
You
then.
get Forbiddance. I don't remember what it does. I just remember that it's. Um, but I think that ritual spells there is still a nice and getting cantrips. Those do scale with your level, not nearly as well as high level
Leveled
spells do. But
spells.
I do think that you get kind of enough utility out of a variety of ritual spells. I would personally choose wizard.
All right. So what if the question was instead wizard who could only use cantrips?
Hmm. I, to be perfectly honest, I would have to look through monk subclasses a little bit more to see what my options would be. But
That's
my
fair.
gut instinct for that one is probably monk.
I was trying to figure out what situation I could come up with that makes playing a monk without key points, not the obvious worst. Um, that it already is. I would agree with you. I would take the same choice because even a wizard who can only use cantrips still has more to do in some ways at least than a monk who can't use key points. And allowing ritual spells, there's some good ones. I mean, at the bare minimum, you can use Find Familiar, and you got a fun little
Yeah,
little pet that doubles as a scout for you.
being a wizard who relies on ritual spells, I just pronounced wizard really weird. But being a wizard who relies on ritual spells kind of forces you to play a utility role in the party. Like you lose your ability to really contribute in combat, but there's a lot of fun stuff you can do outside of party. Being a monk without key points, you're still your main use in the party is in combat. You're just worse at it now,
Yeah, I mean, when you get
and
to the right
that's
levels, you can still climb up walls and run across water and stuff. I guess, but
yeah.
yeah,
Not to bash on monks, but key points are already a huge limitation. Taking them away entirely really does hurt.
that's true. All right, that was all of
And
them,
I
right?
think that's all of them.
You got anything you want
So,
to say to close this out?
um, just to, again, comment if, choose a couple of these and just let us know what your thoughts are. Or if you have other would you rather scenarios for us, If this video does well and we get enough of those, we might do a part 2 of this using like commenter suggestions. That would be fun to do. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is surely a long one, so I won't take up any more of your time. But check out Mantis Project coming soon, and have a great rest of your day.
Yep. If you're still here, thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.